Congressman, why is it important for us to vote locally and at the federal level?
You know, I couldn't say it any better than you just heard it. Everything that happens in government is a response to voting. And to the extent that people don't vote, somebody else is making the decision. So Pastor Jennings, First Baptist Church Franklin, I want to just thank you for emphasizing the importance of voting. John Lewis had his life work on voting. He could have been talking about just about anything, but he recognized that voting was so important. And after he finished the protesting, he ran for city council in Atlanta, then for Congress, and did his work as a legislator. We've seen the damage that can be done, life or death, on voting, because we by a very close vote in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, Donald Trump got elected, and you see people are dying, 150,000 because of COVID-19. Every other country has gotten it straight, but he hasn't been able to figure out how to do testing, how to do other things, and we're suffering. The question about how to open schools. People who are elected will make that decision on whether schools get open, whether they're open, whether it's premature, or you can be sending kids to school when it's dangerous. Congress passed money to make it possible to, the House passed money to open the schools safely, but the Senate, also elected officials, haven't taken it up. But those are decisions that are made based on voting. People are out in the street protesting about policing. Well, police are basically controlled by the city council, and the police are controlled by the local elected officials, the mayor and the city council. In Louisville, Kentucky, a African-American man was shot and killed by police. And when they looked to see what happened, they didn't have their body cameras on. The mayor of the city fired the police chief. Okay, I bet you're gonna have their body cameras on the next time. And whether or not police need to be held accountable in criminal court, that's a decision the elected prosecutor makes. And it can make a difference. In Minneapolis, George Floyd was killed by a police officer. And the question was, is he going to be charged or not? If he's going to be charged, what's the charge going to be? Well, Keith Ellison is a former member of the Congressional Black Caucus. He ran for Attorney General of Minnesota, got elected in a close election. He took over the prosecution as Attorney General. He took over the prosecution. Within a day or so, the charges of that police officer had been enhanced, and the other 3 officers had been arrested. You wonder what would have happened if Keith had lost that close election. And the people who got elected in the House passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act to prohibit chokeholds, no-knock warrants, to prohibit racial profiling, to make sure that you have national standards, make sure you have more data to make decisions on, and make sure that you can hold your police officers accountable by changing some laws that made it kind of hard to hold them accountable. That bill passed the House because it's controlled by Democrats and went over to the Republican Senate, and they haven't taken it up. We can do better than that in policing. We need to make sure that we have people making these decisions on what the laws are going to be based on voting. Now, there's one thing, Reverend Jennings, we need to do, we haven't done a lot of, and that is that young people in our community have to join the police force. So long as we're being policed by people from the outside, you're going to have a problem. You got to join the police force so that we're being policed by ourselves. And it's not us or them, it's us in us. The chief of police, I saw him out at a rally a couple of weeks ago when I was in Franklin. And he said he had asked people to apply for jobs in the police force. And for people in Franklin, African Americans in Franklin, he said he had gotten 0 applications. And so we got to do better than that. People talk about wealth disparity. Everybody's talking about the wealth disparity, that whites have more wealth than blacks. Well, we can do something about it. First, by passing the minimum wage. Minimum wage passed the House. I introduced the bill, $15 an hour by 2025. It's over in the Senate, and they won't take it up. But in the General Assembly, where we voted last November and changed the majority in the House from Republican to Democrat, and in the state Senate from Republican to Democrat, and that bill that couldn't get out of subcommittee last year passed the House and state House, passed the state Senate, and was signed by the governor. And so they're on the way to a $15 an hour minimum wage in Virginia. Access to college is a way to eliminate the wage gap, because the better jobs are always given to those who have the better education. And the House is considering the College Affordability Act, which will make college more affordable. We got to make it easier to join unions. If you're in a union, you get equal pay for equal work, and union members get paid more than non-union members. We got to have housing opportunities. Now, the history is coming out. The federal government was involved in the discrimination against African Americans in home ownership opportunities. And we got to fix that to make sure that everybody can buy a house, because that's where most middle class families get most of their worth, and that's generational. It's inherited. And so if you can buy a house, you're on the way to much better wealth. And then we got to enforce the discrimination laws. Everywhere you see discrimination, you got to attack it, because like Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, where discrimination anywhere is an invitation for discrimination everywhere. And we got to fix the Voting Rights Act. And we noticed in the General Assembly that for years they'd been doing voter suppression, making it harder to vote, more extreme voter ID laws, making it just harder to vote. After we voted in November last year, this new General Assembly started passing laws, as we've heard, to make it easier to vote. No excuse absentee ballots, mail-in ballots, easier identification. All of those are a result of the vote. So if people stay home and let somebody else vote, then what you see is what you're going to get. But we are not powerless in this. If we vote, we can make a difference. And that's why I wanted to make sure I was on this call, Reverend Jennings, to make sure that that message got out. And I'm so delighted to see that First Baptist Church Franklin is making voting a high priority.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Congressman, and wonderful. Thank you. You dropped a lifetime of nuggets in about 3 minutes. So thank you, and I pray, and those who are watching this, I need you to share this. You know, not just for the numbers for my ego. I need you to share this, because what Congressman Scott just said, every living human being needs to hear that. The information that's being shared tonight is absolutely essential. This panel is sharing things that are going to help us shape our future, our communities, and without the information, you know, if you don't know, what you don't know can hurt you. What you don't know can hurt you. And so even now, you can push that share button, start a watch party, tag some people, because we want this information to get out to as many people as possible. Thank you, Congressman. All right, anybody else want to chime in there as far as the importance and the significance of engaging at the local and federal level?
This is Nicole. I want to chime in. Because you asked the question of why it's important to vote. And sometimes we forget that we take up space in our communities. We send our children to public schools. We pay taxes. The people who we elect are the ones making decisions about where our tax dollar is being spent. So in other words, where the money that is being automatically deducted from my check is being spent. And so we elect people that should be representing our interest in that.
Mhm.
That is why it's important to vote. 10,704 votes is what decided the presidential election or the presidential candidate winner for the state of Michigan. That is a neighborhood. That is some members of some churches. That is a precinct. That is not a lot. And that just goes to show the importance of every individual vote, how very critical it is. And the reason that happened is because people felt that their vote did not matter anyway. And so they decided to opt out of the process in and of itself. And what happens when you opt out is you actually vote by opting out. That's sort of a vote. It's a vote for whoever, kind of like, you know, whatever happens, happens. And I know that that's, you know, that sense of apathy, a lot of voters tend to have that. And one of the remedies that I often encourage people who actually have that sense of apathy, people are people. You know, everyone is busy living their daily lives. They're taking care of their children. They're taking care of their families. Now they're having to educate their children from home. These are real life issues that elected officials make decisions about, as Congressman Scott talked about. Everything he said, in addition to the fact that these are folks who are making decisions on your behalf. They represent your interests. They work for the people. And so it's not something that we have the luxury of sitting out on. It's not something that we have the luxury of saying, oh, well, whatever. But then when it comes, then when it hits the fan and we don't have clean drinking water for an entire city, I mean, at what point are we able to hold folks accountable? You know, when decisions are made on your behalf. So I always go back to that number 10,704. And I say, you know, that's a precinct. And it just goes to show us how important each individual person's vote really is and how much that vote really matters.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you, Nicole.
Hey, Marcus, I would like to add just something as well. To piggyback on what Nicole said, from a local standpoint, it's very critical that people pay attention to the ballots in your local communities, because the folks that you elect have direct impact on your life. They are making rules and ordinances that can go into effect immediately, that you will feel a lot sooner than anything that's coming from Congress or any place from the state. These people really impact your life. So it's very important that you participate. As Nicole said, and primary elections are very critical, because a lot of elections are decided in primary elections. And especially this year, we need everybody to vote in this presidential election. But in addition to that, one thing that has nothing to do with voting, but has everything to do with the quality of life that we have, is the census. We need people to be just as committed about completing their census that they are about voting, because census decides what type of dollars come to your community for over a 10-year period. And so it's very critical that people complete those census. I know the deadline is coming up here soon, but we need everybody that can hear our voice, anybody that's in any, especially in urban communities, you need to complete your census. That determines how much money you get for Section 8, for additional grant dollars that come for police, public safety, just quality of life issues that are decided based off those census. And once it's done, that's it for 10 years. And it'll start all over 2 years later. So it's very critical that people not only vote, complete those census forms.